The criminals moved quickly, their footsteps heavy and deliberate, echoing off the walls of the sleek, futuristic building that Elon Musk called home. They had been planning for weeks, tracking his every move, studying his routines, and waiting for the right moment to strike. Tonight was the night. Elon had been attending a series of meetings, leaving his mansion on the outskirts of the city eerily quiet. A perfect time for a job like this. They had no idea what they were walking into. The front door creaked open with a soft push, and the shadows of the intruders stretched across the cold marble floors. Inside, the air was thick with tension as they crept deeper into the mansion, each of them moving with the precision of a predator. They were after one thing, the contents of the vault. Hidden deep inside the house, a treasure trove of data and technology that could change the course of history. They knew Musk would never let anyone steal it, but they didn't expect what was waiting for them. "Let's make this quick," whispered the leader, his voice low and gravelly. "Yeah, just get the vault, and we're out," another criminal muttered, his hands trembling with anticipation. But what they didn't expect, what none of them anticipated, was the pair of watchful eyes that followed their every move, hidden in the shadows. From the moment they set foot inside, the dog had been watching them. A sleek, muscular German shepherd, standing quietly by the window. Its body was tense, ready for action. It wasn't just any dog, it was a retired police K9, one of the most skilled, intelligent, and fierce dogs the force had ever known. Its name was Titan, and it had seen things most humans couldn't even imagine. The criminals didn't realize the mistake they were about to make. Titan's ears perked up as they moved closer to Elon's study. Its instincts told it that something was wrong, that these were not the usual visitors. Its muscles tensed, preparing to spring into action at any given moment. The criminals fumbled their way through the house, their attention fixed on their prize. They knew the layout. They knew where the vault was. They knew Elon Musk wasn't home. Or so they thought. But Titan wasn't fooled. Its time as a K9 officer had sharpened its instincts to the point where it could sense danger before it even arrived. The moment the intruders breached the threshold, Titan knew what was at stake. The dog's loyalty to Elon Musk was absolute, and it would protect him, even if it meant going up against the deadliest of adversaries. The first criminal reached for the vault door, eager to complete the job. His hand hovered just inches from the keypad when a low growl echoed from the darkness. The air seemed to freeze as the criminals slowly turned, their faces pale with the sudden realization that they weren't alone. "Who's there?" one of the intruders hissed, his voice tight with fear. Titan stepped forward, its glowing eyes piercing through the dark. The dog was calm but deadly, its posture confident and its body coiled like a spring. Its snout flared as it let out another growl, this one louder, more forceful. The criminals froze. They could feel the presence of something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. A moment passed, thick with tension. Then, without warning, Titan pounced, its powerful limbs propelling it forward with unimaginable speed. In that moment, everything changed. The intruders, confident they had the upper hand just seconds earlier, now found themselves face to face with a foe they never saw coming, a retired K9 officer, capable of taking down multiple criminals with a single movement. The leader shouted in panic as Titan rushed forward, its teeth bared, ready to protect its owner at all costs. One of the criminals swung around to face the dog, but it was too late. Titan was already on him, pinning him to the ground with ease. The other criminals scrambled in fear, trying to flee, but the dog was relentless. The air was thick with chaos, and in that split second, the criminals realized the magnitude of their mistake. They had targeted the wrong person. They hadn't just broken into Elon Musk's home. They had disturbed a sleeping giant. A retired K9 hero, now bound by a sense of duty and loyalty, was standing between them and the prize they had so desperately sought. And they had no idea what they were up against. Titan's growl echoed through the mansion, a warning that these criminals would never forget. The criminals' shock was palpable. Titan's attack had taken them by complete surprise. Their eyes darted between each other, faces drained of color as they scrambled to make sense of what was happening. The leader, still on edge, attempted to steady his breath, his hand reaching for his gun. But it was no use. Titan was faster, sharper, and more calculated than they could have ever imagined. The first criminal, struggling beneath Titan's powerful grip, managed to wriggle free for just a moment. "Shoot the dog," he shouted, his voice breaking in panic. But his command came too late. Titan's quick reflexes had already positioned itself between the criminals and the door. The dog had them trapped. One by one, the criminals tried to back away, their movements erratic, but Titan's unyielding gaze never wavered. It was clear this wasn't just any pet. This was something far more dangerous. "Stay back," the leader barked, as though trying to regain control of the situation. "We need to get out of here." But Titan wasn't done. With a sudden burst of movement, the dog lunged forward, knocking the leader off balance and sending him crashing to the ground. Titan was on him in a split second, pinning him down with a fierce growl. As the criminals watched in horror, it was then that they realized, the dog wasn't acting on instinct alone. There was something more to it. This wasn't just a regular guard dog. This was a trained warrior. The flashbacks came in a rush, flashes of Titan's former life as a police K-9 officer. The dog's time spent tracking criminals, subduing dangerous suspects, and protecting officers in the line of fire. These weren't just memories. They were instincts, ingrained into Titan's very soul. Every movement, every command was second nature. Titan had been part of countless high-stakes missions, earning the respect and admiration of every officer who worked alongside it. Now, Titan was fighting for something even greater, its loyalty to Elon Musk. This wasn't just about stopping criminals, it was personal. The criminals, though desperate, began to piece together the truth. This wasn't just any dog, this was a legendary retired K-9, known for its impeccable skills and its long, heroic career. The stories about Titan's exploits had circulated among law enforcement for years, but they had never imagined they would face the dog themselves. They had thought it was just a story. One of the criminals tried to crawl to the door, but Titan had already anticipated this. With a swift motion, the dog positioned itself to block the exit. The intruders were trapped, nowhere to go but back into the shadows of the house, where the dog had complete control. "Do you know who you're messing with?" one of the criminals shouted, realizing that they had stepped into something far bigger than a simple heist. But Titan didn't respond with words. It didn't need to. Its presence alone spoke volumes. The criminals were beginning to feel the weight of their mistake. Behind the chaos, the door to Elon's study slowly creaked open. Elon Musk had been listening to the commotion from the other side, a mix of shock and disbelief on his face. He had heard the noise, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight that awaited him. Titan, standing tall and confident, was fully in control. The criminals were on the ground, their hands raised in submission, realizing they had no chance of escape. Elon took a slow, cautious step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, all he could do was stare at Titan, his loyal companion, now proving just how much it had been trained to protect. He had known Titan was special, but this? This was something beyond his expectations. The criminals, on the other hand, were too stunned to make a move. They had come here to take everything. To steal what was rightfully Elon's. But they hadn't anticipated the silent force of nature that stood before them, a force forged in the heart of danger itself. "You made a huge mistake," Elon said, his voice low but firm, stepping closer to the criminals. He knew Titan had everything under control, but there was something profoundly unsettling about how easily the dog had handled the situation. It wasn't just about protection. It was about the years of training, the countless hours spent sharpening its skills, and the unshakable bond between man and dog. The criminals, now helpless and shaking, had no idea what to do. The legendary K-9 officer, Titan, had changed the game. Elon looked down at the dog, who was now sitting obediently by his side, its eyes never leaving the criminals. There was no fear in Titan's gaze, only calm, unwavering authority. Elon knew that this dog had just saved him, and probably much more than that. In that moment, he realized how much Titan had been through, how much the dog had sacrificed for others, and how much it was willing to do for him. The criminals, once confident in their plan, now realized they were facing something far more dangerous than a vault full of treasure. They were facing a protector, one who would not let them walk away unscathed. And, as they looked at Elon, they knew they were in the presence of someone who had more than enough power to end them. Titan had already won. The criminals' attempts to regroup were futile. Every move they made, every plan they whispered to one another in desperation, was anticipated and countered by Titan with ease. The dog's training as a police K-9 officer was in full effect now, its instincts sharp and its actions precise. Elon stood at the side, watching with a mix of awe and gratitude as his loyal companion took control of the situation. Titan wasn't just an ordinary dog, it was a seasoned veteran, a warrior trained for high-stakes operations. This wasn't the first time the dog had faced danger. It had been through countless life-or-death moments as part of the police force, where split-second decisions could make the difference between life and death. As one of the criminals tried to make a run for it, Titan was already on him. The dog's muscles rippled as it charged forward, closing the distance with terrifying speed. In a blur of motion, Titan knocked the criminal to the ground, its powerful paws pinning him to the floor before the man could even get his bearings. The criminal struggled, but Titan's hold was unbreakable. "Please. Stop. We surrender," the criminal pleaded, his voice cracking in fear. The terror in his eyes was unmistakable. He had never encountered anything like this. No one could have predicted that a single dog, despite its size, could command so much authority and power. Titan's sharp eyes never left the criminal's face. With a quick shift, the dog released him, but only for a moment. The criminal, still in shock, backed away slowly, unsure if he should try to run again or surrender fully. Titan, however, wasn't finished yet. The dog had been trained to keep criminals in check, to maintain a strong presence in tense situations, and it did so flawlessly. As Titan stood tall, scanning the room, it was clear to Elon that the dog was more than capable of handling the situation. In fact, the criminals were now completely at Titan's mercy. The dog's presence alone was enough to make them rethink their decisions. The leader of the group, now on his knees, looked up at Elon. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his hands trembled. He had expected a high-stakes robbery, but this was nothing like what he had imagined. They were outmatched, outsmarted, and overwhelmed. They had picked the wrong target. They had underestimated the protection that surrounded Elon Musk. Elon's calmness in the face of danger was evident as he approached Titan. He bent down and gently placed a hand on the dog's back, speaking softly but with respect. "Good boy, Titan," Elon whispered, his voice steady. The dog's ears perked up at the praise, but it didn't take its eyes off the criminals. It wasn't done yet. Its duty wasn't over. The criminals, who had once planned to walk in, take what they wanted, and leave without a trace, were now prisoners in their own panic. They had been trained to react to danger, but they had never faced anything like Titan. The dog's training had prepared it for moments like this, when fear had to be conquered with precision, when hesitation could be deadly. Titan's training had shaped it into a near-perfect soldier. The dog had been part of countless operations, from tracking down suspects to providing backup during dangerous raids. It had been in situations where lives were on the line, and its mission was clear: protect, serve, and neutralize threats. Every command, every movement had been ingrained into Titan's psyche. As the leader of the criminals tried to muster up the courage to speak, Titan's eyes fixed on him. Without a word, the dog took one step forward, asserting its dominance. It wasn't just a guard dog, it was a force of nature. Elon's eyes softened as he watched Titan. He had always known the dog had something extraordinary about it, but seeing it in action, seeing Titan handle the threat with such grace and power, made him realize just how lucky he was. This was no ordinary pet. This was a true hero, forged in the line of duty. "I think it's time you tell me who sent you," Elon said, his voice steady as he faced the criminals. Titan, standing beside him, growled softly, a reminder that the criminals had no choice but to comply. The leader of the criminals swallowed hard, but his defiance was gone. Titan had already proven that resistance was futile. The man's shoulders sagged in defeat, and his gaze fell to the floor. With the criminals now at his mercy, Elon knew the danger wasn't over yet. They had been caught, but the questions remained: why had they targeted him? Who had sent them? And what else were they after? Titan, still watching the criminals, seemed to sense Elon's growing curiosity. The dog's sharp eyes scanned each one, waiting for the next move. The criminals knew their time was running out. In the silence that followed, the tension in the room thickened. The answers to those questions lay just ahead, and Titan would be there every step of the way to ensure that justice was served. The tension in the room grew heavier as the criminals remained immobilized, the realization dawning upon them that they were no longer in control. They had come here for a simple heist, steal the secrets locked away in Elon Musk's vault, and vanish without a trace. But now, they were at the mercy of a retired police K-9, who had become the sole guardian of the house. Titan, standing guard beside Elon, didn't flinch. It kept its sharp gaze on the criminals, its every muscle coiled in anticipation. There was no rush in the dog's actions. It had the situation under control. The criminals, however, could feel the walls closing in. They had been part of robberies before, but this was different. This wasn't just about getting caught, this was about survival. Elon's voice broke through the silence, steady and firm, though the undercurrent of frustration was palpable. "Why are you here?" he asked, his eyes narrowing as he looked at each criminal. His question was simple, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. This was no longer a simple break-in. It was a personal attack. The leader, still kneeling, swallowed hard, glancing nervously at his associates. His eyes flicked to Titan before returning to Elon. He knew they had no choice but to answer, but fear clouded his mind. Titan's presence was overwhelming, and every movement of the dog was calculated, deliberate, a reminder of its years of service and the lives it had saved. I don't know," the leader stammered, his voice shaking. "We were just hired, to get in, take what we could, and leave. I don't know who hired us." A sharp growl from Titan silenced him instantly. The dog's gaze never left the leader, its unblinking stare a silent warning. It wasn't time for games. Titan was ready to end this, but Elon held up a hand, signaling the dog to stand down, at least for a moment. "There's always a bigger picture," Elon said, his tone colder now, as if he had already guessed that this attack was just the beginning. "You're telling me someone just hired you? No questions asked?" The leader hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But Titan's eyes never wavered, and the silence in the room was thick with expectation. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. The dog's presence was like an invisible force, pressing in on the criminals, making it impossible for them to think clearly. Finally, the leader broke. "We were hired by someone who knew about your work, your projects. They knew what you were doing, and they thought it was worth a lot of money. They promised us a fortune if we got inside your vault." His voice faltered. "But we didn't expect this, we didn't expect the dog." Elon's face remained unreadable, but inside, his mind was racing. This wasn't a random act. This was a calculated attempt, and someone with knowledge of his projects, had planned it. But why? What's in the vault? Elon pressed, his eyes never leaving the criminals. What exactly were you looking for? The leader lowered his gaze, unwilling to meet Elon's eyes. I don't know. I swear, we were just told to take whatever we could find, and to get out. It was supposed to be a simple job. But Elon knew better. Nothing was ever simple when it came to his work. His projects, his innovations, they had made him a target for those who would stop at nothing to take what they couldn't create themselves. This was no ordinary break-in. This was part of something much bigger, something that had just begun. Titan stood silently by his side, its posture unwavering, as if it too understood the gravity of the situation. Elon could feel the weight of the dog's presence. Titan wasn't just protecting him, it was a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the world outside. A world where people were willing to risk everything for the power and knowledge contained in that vault. We're not done here, Elon said, his voice cold and decisive. I want to know who hired you. And if you don't tell me, I won't hesitate to make sure you regret it. The criminals' eyes darted between each other, realizing just how serious the situation had become. Titan hadn't moved an inch, its unblinking gaze fixed on them. The dog had already proven its loyalty and skill, and it wasn't about to back down now. We don't know much, the leader finally confessed, his voice shaking. Just that they were working with someone who has a lot of resources. A lot of power. They knew you were working on something big, something that could change everything. Elon's curiosity deepened, but so did his concern. There was more to this than just a robbery. The pieces were starting to fit together, but they still didn't make sense. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. Titan's ears perked up as if sensing Elon's thoughts. The dog was ready, its posture alert and tense. It had already proven itself capable of handling the situation, but the real challenge was yet to come. The criminals, though subdued for now, were merely pawns in a larger game. And the mastermind behind it all? That was the real threat. But for now, Elon knew he had one priority: protect the vault, protect his secrets. And with Titan by his side, he had no intention of letting anyone, criminals or shadowy figures, get close to what he had worked so hard to build. The standoff continued, the air thick with unanswered questions, as Titan's growl echoed through the room again, a subtle but unmistakable reminder that the dog was in charge. The criminals, once bold and confident, were now reduced to mere shadows of their former selves. The truth was out, yet the situation had only grown more complicated. Elon Musk stood still, absorbing the weight of what they had said. Someone powerful, someone who knew about his most secretive projects, had orchestrated this. But who? And why? Titan, standing beside Elon like an unshakable fortress, was more than just a companion in this moment. The dog's calm demeanor gave Elon a strange sense of reassurance, as if Titan understood the true depth of the situation. This was no random robbery. This was personal. And Titan, in its quiet way, had already proven that it would go to any lengths to protect him. Elon turned toward the criminals, now slumped against the walls, their fear palpable. Tell me everything you know, Elon demanded, his voice carrying a certain authority that could no longer be ignored. And I mean everything. The leader, still on his knees, gulped. The dog's unflinching gaze on him was more terrifying than any weapon. He had been on the wrong side of law enforcement for most of his life, but this was different. He had never been faced with a situation like this before. And even if they were going to die here today, he didn't want it to be at the hands of a dog like that. The criminals exchanged uneasy glances, then one of them, a younger man, broke down first. I didn't want to get involved in this, he muttered, his voice trembling. We were just told to show up and take whatever we could find. We don't know the bigger picture. But we saw things we shouldn't have seen. Like what? Elon pressed, stepping closer. Titan mirrored his movement, its presence commanding the room. The young man, breaking down under the pressure, began to speak quickly. There were reports about the vault's contents. We didn't know what it was, but there were people who believed whatever you were working on could change everything. They said it was a game changer, that it could put all the big players in the industry at risk. Elon's mind raced. The cryptic details were no surprise to him. There had always been whispers, rumors about the advanced technologies he was developing, but he had no idea that the stakes had grown so high. Whoever was behind this didn't just want information, they wanted to control it. He had spent years building this empire, pushing boundaries that no one dared to cross. But now, he could sense that the very thing he had built was becoming a target. Then, the leader of the group spoke, his voice shaky but filled with a new sense of dread. I know this sounds crazy, but they said it had to do with something you've been working on for years, something that would change how we live. They said it was bigger than space. Bigger than anything. Elon stared at them, the weight of the words settling on his shoulders like a crushing load. Bigger than space, he repeated under his breath. Could it be that someone had discovered the next phase of his work? The project he had kept under wraps for years, the one he had hoped would change humanity's future? He turned to Titan, silently communicating his thoughts. The dog stood by his side, still alert but calm, as if it understood the gravity of the situation. It had always been a companion, but now it was more than that. Titan wasn't just protecting Elon, it had become an integral part of his world, his legacy. And as the past collided with the present, the true story of Titan began to unfold in Elon's mind. Titan had been part of countless operations. Its time as a police K-9 officer had earned it a reputation that even the criminals in the room had heard about. It had tracked down dangerous suspects, rescued kidnapped children, and diffused volatile situations. Titan had been a hero long before Elon had brought it into his life, but what these criminals didn't know was that the dog's service went far beyond the badge it wore. There had been a time, years ago, when Titan had been part of an elite task force. A K-9 team that worked with high-level government agents, protecting national interests, and uncovering threats that no one ever knew about. It had been on missions that required the utmost secrecy, missions where failure meant lives lost and secrets buried. It wasn't just about sniffing out drugs or catching criminals. Titan had been part of something bigger, something far more dangerous. And in those missions, Titan had seen things that most people couldn't even imagine. Its training had been relentless, its purpose clear, to protect, to serve, and to never back down, no matter the cost. And when Elon had adopted Titan after its retirement, the dog's skills hadn't faded. They had only grown sharper. Titan had witnessed humanity at its worst, and its best. It had stood guard over high-profile government officials and aided in the arrest of international criminals. But now, it was standing guard over Elon, a man whose work had already begun to change the world. As the criminals cowered in front of them, Titan's past seemed to come alive again. Elon wasn't just facing a dangerous situation. He was facing an enemy that wanted more than just his wealth, his inventions, or his ideas. They wanted control. And they were willing to do anything to take it from him. Titan had once been part of a team that fought to protect the future. And now, it was standing alongside Elon Musk, ready to protect the very future that had made them both targets. The story of Titan's heroism wasn't just one of past glory, it was unfolding right before Elon's eyes. And as he looked down at his loyal companion, the weight of what they were about to face became clearer than ever before. This wasn't just about stopping a robbery. This was about something far greater, something that could change the world. But before they could move forward, Elon knew that the criminals had one more thing to reveal. Something that could lead them straight to the people behind the attack. Something that could hold the key to stopping whatever was coming next. The room was silent except for the soft sound of Titan's breathing, steady and calm as always. Elon's mind was racing, his thoughts spinning. The criminals had revealed the bare minimum, but he knew there was more to the story. The pieces were starting to fit together, but there were still gaps, critical pieces of the puzzle that needed to be uncovered. The criminals, however, were visibly broken. Their earlier bravado had evaporated, replaced by fear and confusion. Titan's presence had shattered their confidence. They knew they had underestimated their target, but now it was too late. They had been cornered, and every word they spoke was now weighed with the consequences of their actions. Elon crossed his arms, his gaze steady. He had always prided himself on being prepared, anticipating the challenges that came with his work. But this? This was a new level of danger. He had been the target of threats before, but the magnitude of what was unfolding before him felt different. These criminals weren't just after his wealth, they were after something far more valuable. Something that, if it fell into the wrong hands, could change the world in ways he wasn't ready for. "You've told me about the job, but not about who hired you," Elon said, his voice measured. "Who is behind this? Who's orchestrating this entire thing?" The leader of the criminals, still kneeling, hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the door, as if considering his next move. But then Titan shifted slightly, and the fear returned in full force. The dog's gaze locked onto him, unwavering and full of silent menace. There was no escaping the truth. Not now. Not with Titan standing guard. I don't know their name," the leader admitted, his voice trembling. "We were just given a contact. A person who knew about you. Knew what you were working on. But I swear, I never saw their face. They were always careful, never direct contact." Elon took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. His mind was processing the words, but the lack of details was frustrating. Someone knew about his projects. Someone had inside knowledge. And now, they had come to take what Elon had built, what he had been preparing for years. "I need more than that," Elon said, his eyes narrowing. "Where did they contact you? How did you get the job?" The leader's voice faltered, but he knew he had no choice. "We were contacted by a middleman, a man with access to high-level information. He said he had been hired by someone important. Someone who was willing to pay handsomely for whatever you were working on. They said the vault held the key to something big. That it was worth more than anything in this world." Elon leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What do you mean by the key to something big?" "I don't know for sure," the leader continued, his eyes darting around the room, "but they said it was the future. They said it was bigger than anything anyone had ever seen before. They told us to get inside, take what we could, and leave. The rest didn't matter." Elon's mind was a whirlwind now. The dog beside him, Titan, remained still, unmoving, its eyes locked on the criminals. But inside, Elon's thoughts were racing. The vault didn't just contain data, technology, or anything as simple as a financial asset. It contained something that could change the entire course of humanity's future. He had always known his work was going to be revolutionary, but hearing it from these criminals, hearing them speak of a mysterious force that wanted to control what he had, brought a chill to his spine. "Who else knows about the vault?" Elon asked, his voice low, dangerous. The leader swallowed. "Only a few people. The contact," he said, "the person behind this would never be known. That they operated from the shadows. They didn't want anyone to know who they were. But they knew what you were capable of." Elon's pulse quickened. The walls were closing in. He was being watched. The very thing he had worked so hard to protect had become the target of someone who understood its potential, someone who wasn't afraid to do anything to seize control. As the criminal finished speaking, the room fell silent once again. The remaining criminals glanced nervously at each other, realizing the gravity of the situation. Titan hadn't moved, but there was something in the dog's eyes now, a flicker of recognition. It was as if Titan, too, had picked up on the faintest whisper of danger lurking in the shadows. Elon, the leader whispered, "We didn't know it would go this far. We didn't know it would end like this." But Elon wasn't listening anymore. His thoughts had already moved on to the next step. The criminals were no longer his concern. They were just pawns in a much larger game. The real enemy was out there, operating in the shadows, orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. Whoever they were, they had planned this meticulously. And now, they were coming for what he had built. Titan, sensing Elon's shift in focus, gave a quiet growl, signaling that it was ready for whatever was to come next. "Take them to the authorities," Elon said, his voice final. "And make sure they don't see daylight again. But you," he pointed at the leader, "you will tell me everything you know about this contact. The next step depends on you." As the criminals were escorted away, Titan stayed close, its loyalty unshakable. The plan had changed. It wasn't just about protecting his work anymore, it was about stopping a force that had the power to turn everything upside down. And with Titan by his side, Elon Musk knew one thing for sure: whoever was coming after him would soon realize they had picked the wrong target. Elon stood in the stillness of the room, his mind racing as the criminals were led away, their fates sealed. The gravity of what had just transpired was starting to settle in. The vault, the stolen secrets, and the people behind it all, it was more than just a robbery gone wrong. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous, and Elon knew it was only a matter of time before the true scope of the threat revealed itself. Titan, ever watchful, sat by Elon's side, its calm demeanor masking the tension that both of them felt. The dog's presence was a constant reassurance, but even Titan's steely confidence couldn't erase the nagging feeling of dread that lingered in Elon's chest. The cryptic remarks from the criminals, the shadowy figure behind the attack, and the mention of something bigger than anything anyone had ever seen before, it was all too much to ignore. Elon's phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a text message from a trusted colleague, one who worked closely with him on the projects that had made him a target in the first place. He opened the message, his eyes scanning the words quickly. "It's happening. We're being watched. Be careful." The text was short, but it sent a chill down Elon's spine. This wasn't just about the vault anymore. This was about something more, something the criminals had only scratched the surface of. Someone, somewhere, was tracking his every move, anticipating his next decision. And they were willing to do whatever it took to take what he had. He quickly typed a response, his fingers moving fast, thoughts colliding. He couldn't afford to waste time. The threat was already too close. "Elon, you need to move fast. Whatever is in that vault, they'll stop at nothing to get it," came the reply, a stark reminder of just how serious the situation had become. He looked up at Titan, who remained by his side, waiting for the next command. "Let's get to the vault," Elon said, his voice firm. Titan's ears perked up, its eyes narrowing with focus. It had already done its job, protecting Elon from the criminals, but now there was a new level of danger, a threat that was larger and more shadowy than anything they had faced so far. As they made their way to the vault, the house felt different, more like a fortress than a home. Every corner seemed to hide secrets, and every shadow felt heavier than before. The path to the vault had always been secure, protected by the best technology Elon could afford. But now, as they reached the door, it felt less like a secure place and more like a target. Elon keyed in the combination, and the heavy door opened with a soft hiss, revealing the vault's contents. Inside were all the pieces of his life's work, the innovations, the projects, the breakthroughs. It was everything he had worked for, everything he had believed would push humanity into a new era. But as he stepped inside, his heart sank. There, nestled among the advanced technology, was something he hadn't anticipated, a small, unmarked case, barely visible in the corner. The case was new, something he hadn't placed there. It felt wrong. Elon moved toward the case, his mind whirling. He hadn't put it there. No one else could have. His eyes narrowed, and a sinking feeling settled in his stomach. Someone had been inside the vault, someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. And they had left something behind, something that didn't belong. He lifted the case carefully, feeling the weight of it in his hands. There was no label, no indicator of what it contained. But he could feel its importance. It was heavy with purpose, as though it was meant for someone else. Titan growled low, its body tense beside him. The dog, always so perceptive, had sensed the change in the air. There was danger here, and it wasn't just about the criminals anymore. Someone had tampered with the vault, and it wasn't just a random break-in. They had taken what they wanted, and left something behind to send a message. Elon's mind was racing, the implications dawning on him. They weren't just after technology. They were after something far more valuable, something that could change the course of everything he had worked for. And this case, this mystery, was at the heart of it all. What is this? Elon muttered to himself, his fingers brushing the cold surface of the case. The answers were just beyond his reach, but he knew one thing for sure: whoever was behind this had been watching, waiting, and now they were leaving clues that would lead Elon into a web of intrigue far deeper than he ever imagined. Titan's growl grew louder, and Elon knew they weren't alone. The danger had evolved from a simple robbery to something more sinister. The shadowy figure behind it all was getting closer. The vault, once a symbol of Elon's success, had become the focal point of a far-reaching plot. And as he stood there, holding the mysterious case, he understood, the real battle was just beginning. Before Elon could even process what was happening, the sound of footsteps echoed outside the vault room. Someone was coming. Someone knew they were here. And this time, they weren't just after the vault. They were after him. "Titan, stay close," Elon whispered urgently. The dog's eyes locked with his, and for a moment, there was an unspoken understanding between them. The enemy was closing in, but together, they would face whatever came next. Titan had been by his side through everything, and now, with the future at stake, the bond between them would be tested like never before. Elon knew that he had to find out what was inside the case before it was too late. And with Titan by his side, he wasn't going to let anyone take that knowledge away from him. The footsteps outside the vault grew louder, more deliberate. Elon's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a heavy reminder of the stakes at hand. He could feel the weight of the case in his hands, but it was no longer just about the secrets it held. It was about survival. About keeping the knowledge safe and ensuring that whoever was after him didn't get their hands on it. Titan's body was rigid beside him, its eyes locked on the door, ears alert. The dog had sensed the change in the air, the danger that was about to crash down on them. With every second that passed, the tension in the room thickened. Titan's training had prepared it for moments like this, when the stakes were high and the enemy was closing in. The dog didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. It was ready. Elon set the case down on a nearby table, his eyes never leaving the door. "Stay alert, Titan," he murmured, barely a whisper, but the command was clear. Titan didn't need words. It knew what to do. The K-9 officer instinctively crouched, lowering its body into an attack-ready stance, awaiting the signal to move. The footsteps outside were now at the threshold. Elon's breath was steady, his thoughts sharp. Whoever was coming for him knew exactly where he was, and they were closing in fast. There was no time to waste. He had to protect the case, whatever it was, and make sure no one could access the vault again. Just as the door to the vault room creaked open, Elon felt a sudden wave of realization wash over him. This wasn't just about stopping a break-in anymore. This was an all-out war, an invisible war that had been brewing beneath the surface, unseen, unnoticed, until now. Someone had known exactly what he was working on. And now, they were willing to do anything to take it. The door swung open wide, revealing a figure standing in the doorway. A tall man, dressed in dark tactical gear, his face obscured by a mask. He stood still for a moment, sizing up the room, eyes scanning the space. But then they fixed on Elon and Titan. "You've been a problem for too long, Musk," the man said, his voice cold and calculated. "It's time to end it." The words were a direct threat, but Elon didn't flinch. He wasn't afraid of this man. He was afraid of what he represented, the forces that had been shadowing him, pulling strings, watching from the darkness. Titan growled, a low, menacing sound, its muscles rippling beneath its coat. The dog wasn't waiting for a command. It was already in motion. The man made a move toward Elon, but Titan was faster. In one fluid motion, the dog lunged forward, knocking the intruder off balance and sending him crashing to the floor with a resounding thud. The man was quick to recover, but Titan had already positioned itself between Elon and the intruder, blocking the way, its eyes burning with protective fury. "Stay back," Elon commanded, his voice steady, but there was a cold edge to it now. "You're not going to take anything from me." The room felt like a battlefield now, chaos swirling around them, yet still, there was an undeniable sense of control. Titan, still in its protective stance, was every bit the trained warrior. The criminals had underestimated the dog, and now they were going to pay the price for their arrogance. But Elon Musk wasn't just fighting to defend his work or the secrets hidden in the vault. This had become about something far greater, a test of resilience, loyalty, and the lengths one would go to protect what mattered most. The figures in the doorway didn't hesitate. They were professionals, prepared, coordinated. But Titan didn't falter. With a low growl, it advanced, ready to face whatever challenge came next. Elon could feel the tension in the air as the seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. The criminals had underestimated the wrong man, and more importantly, the wrong dog. One of the newcomers lunged forward, a knife gleaming in the dim light. Titan moved faster than the eye could follow, its powerful jaws clamping down on the man's wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon. In that instant, Titan pivoted, knocking the man off balance with a swift push of its powerful body. The intruder fell to the ground, disoriented and defeated. Titan's growl echoed through the room like a warning to the others, daring them to make their move. Elon, still standing strong, didn't flinch. He wasn't watching the fight unfold through fear or desperation. Instead, he observed it with clarity, realizing the value of everything he had built over the years, not just the technology, but the bonds that had made him stronger. Titan wasn't just a dog. It was a symbol of loyalty and trust, of something greater than even the most powerful inventions. In that moment, Elon understood something profound. Throughout his life, he had been focused on advancing humanity, on reaching for the stars, on creating a future that was brighter and more connected. But none of that would matter without the willingness to protect and defend. Whether it was his groundbreaking projects, his family, or the people he trusted, Elon realized that true strength wasn't just in creating the future, it was in being ready to defend it, no matter the cost. The remaining intruders, now seeing the full force of Titan's power and Elon's resolve, began to hesitate. They had come with the belief that they could simply take what they wanted, using force and intimidation. But what they hadn't accounted for was the strength of a person willing to fight for what mattered. Elon Musk, one of the remaining criminals, said, his voice cracking with fear. We didn't know you'd be this prepared." But Elon's gaze was unwavering. He was more than prepared. He was unshakable. "It's not just about preparation," Elon said quietly. "It's about knowing what's worth protecting and being willing to do anything to keep it safe." He looked down at Titan, whose posture had softened just slightly but remained alert. "This is what loyalty looks like. This is what strength looks like." The criminals were defeated, broken, without any fight left in them. They had come for the technology, for the secrets of the vault, but they had found something much greater. They had found a man and a dog who understood that the greatest power lay in resilience and loyalty. No amount of money, power, or resources could take that away. "Take them away," Elon said, his voice steady as he gestured to the authorities who had arrived just in time to handle the criminals. "And make sure they don't threaten anyone again." As the criminals were escorted out of the building, Elon couldn't help but feel a strange sense of clarity. The danger had passed, but the lesson remained. No matter how advanced the technology, no matter how groundbreaking the ideas, it was the bonds we forged, through loyalty, through resilience, that would carry us through the darkest times. Titan, standing loyally by his side, had proven that. In the face of unimaginable odds, it was the heart, the courage, and the connection we share with those we trust that truly made us strong. And so, Elon Musk stood there, with Titan beside him, knowing that the future he sought to create wasn't just about the innovations he had made, it was about the people and the companions who helped him bring it to life. It was about choosing to fight for something greater than yourself. In the end, the greatest lesson Elon had learned was simple: no invention, no discovery, no breakthrough would ever matter without the strength to protect it. And with loyalty, trust, and resilience, anything was possible. As the last of the criminals were taken away, Elon turned toward the vault one last time. Whatever was inside the case, whatever it represented, he knew now that the fight wasn't over. But with Titan at his side, he was ready for whatever came next. And that was the true power, the power to face any challenge, no matter how great, with unwavering determination.